So picture this. It is 2004, and Carla Reed, she's this 30-year-old kindergarten teacher, mother of 3, living in Ipswich, Massachusetts. She starts getting these really strange, map-shaped bruises on her back.
Just out of nowhere, right?
Completely out of nowhere. They just appear and vanish. And then a few days later, she's looking in the mirror and sees her gums are like stark white.
Oh, wow. That is terrifying.
Yeah. And then this profound exhaustion hits her. I mean, this is a woman whose job is literally chasing 5-year-olds all day. And suddenly she's physically crawling on all 4s down her own hallway just to get to the bedroom.
Because she just doesn't have the energy to even stand up.
Exactly. She's sleeping 14 hours a day and waking up totally depleted. And then she wakes up one morning with a headache that she later describes as this profound numbness, like a physical sensation that just screams to your brain that something is irrevocably wrong.
And, you know, her local doctor was totally stumped by that specific symptom profile at first. I mean, they actually suggested it might just be a really severe migraine and told her to take some aspirin.
Which is just a horrifying suggestion in hindsight.
Absolutely terrifying. Because aspirin is a blood thinner, so it only made her white gums bleed even more profusely.
Right. Well, welcome to your personalized deep dive. Today we are taking the stack of sources you provided, specifically looking at these incredible excerpts from Siddhartha Mukherjee's The Emperor of All Maladies. And we're trying to figure out how cancer went from this completely misunderstood, whispered about death sentence into a measurable, fightable disease.
That's a huge transition.
It really is.
Okay,
let's unpack this, because to understand that transition, we have to look at what was actually happening inside Carla Reed's body. That headache she had. It wasn't a migraine, it was literally her brain gasping for oxygen because her red blood cell count had just crashed.
Yeah, when they finally drew her blood, it barely even looked like blood. It was pale and watery, just totally dilute.
Which makes no sense, right? Like, how does blood get watery?
It's this staggering biological paradox. To really get it, you have to look at the bone marrow, which is basically the nursery for your blood.
Okay.
In a healthy person, the marrow is this highly organized, beautifully structured organ that pumps out exactly what the body needs. But Carla's marrow had been completely obliterated by these malignant cells, which oncologists call blasts.
Blasts. Just the word sounds violent.
It really does. She had acute lymphoblastic leukemia, or OAL.
And the numbers from the text are just chilling. A normal adult has about, 5,000 white blood cells per milliliter of blood?
Roughly, yeah.
Carla had 90,000.
Which is insane.
Almost 20 times the normal amount, but her body was still completely defenseless.
Right, and that is the tragic irony of leukemia. She was living in the state of immunological poverty in the face of absolute plenty.
I like that phrasing. Poverty in the face of plenty.
Because those 90,000 white blood cells, they were all immature blasts. They were produced so fast that they never actually developed the ability to fight infection.
So they're completely useless.
Totally useless. Not a single one could do its job. They just crowded out the healthy red blood cells, which is why her brain was starving for oxygen.
God, the speed of LL is just, it's exactly what makes it such a terrifying enemy.
Yeah.
But to figure out how doctors even began to conceptualize stopping something that multiplies that fast, we actually have to leave 2004.
Right, we have to go way back.
Yeah, over a century back, to see how humanity first tried to even comprehend what this disease was.
Yeah.
Because for the longest time, science was looking right at cancer and just totally misreading the evidence.
Oh, absolutely. The early discoveries perfectly show how, we're all sort of trapped by the medical paradigms of our time. Like in 1845, 2 researchers, totally independent of each other, stumble onto this exact disease.
Right, there's John Bennett in Scotland.
Yeah, Bennett does an autopsy on a 28-year-old slate layer who had a massive spleen, fevers, bleeding. And when Bennett looks at the blood, it's just packed with white cells.
And based on the 1840s, his brain immediately goes to infection because white blood cells make up pus.
Exactly. So Bennett looks at this milky blood and is like, well, the blood just spoiled. He thinks it spontaneously combusted into pus without any wound. He calls it a separation of blood.
Which sounds so archaic now, but I guess it made sense to him.
It was highly logical if you only view the world through the lens of infectious disease. But then, a few months later, you get Rudolf Virchow. He's this 24-year-old German researcher looking at a similar case in a cook.
And Virchow does something that is, honestly, incredibly rare for an academic.
He admits he's clueless.
Yes, he totally acknowledges the limits of his own understanding. He rejects Bennett's separation theory because, to him, Spontaneous pus without a wound violates all biology. So he just says, I don't know what this is, and calls it Weiss's blood. White blood.
Which is where we get the term leukemia, from the Greek leukos, meaning white.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Virchow didn't just name it. He completely changed how we understand human biology. He eventually comes up with his cellular theory. Omnis cellula, cellula meaning cells, only come from other cells.
Right. All cells arise from cells.
And to really visualize what he figured out, picture a picture like a balloon in your hands right now. If you want to make that balloon bigger, you really only have two options. First, you can just blow more air into that single balloon, stretching it out.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
In biology, that's called hypertrophy. It's how, like, a heart muscle gets larger so it can pump harder.
So the cell count is the same, just the volume of that one unit gets bigger.
Right. Now, the second option is you start blowing up dozens or hundreds of brand new balloons. You're increasing the actual number of cells. That is hyperplasia.
Which is normal, right?
Totally normal. It's how your skin grows or how your bone marrow replenishes your blood. It's highly regulated multiplication.
What's fascinating here is that Virchow saw normal tissues doing exactly those two things. But when he looked at tumors under his microscope, he saw this third, just deeply disturbing reality.
The third option.
Yeah. He saw hyperplasia cells multiplying by the millions, but there was absolutely zero regulation. They weren't fixing an injury. They weren't following any blueprint. They just had this autonomous drive to endlessly divide.
They wouldn't stop.
Never. He named this neoplasia disordered, inexplicable new growth.
And this right here is the moment humanity realizes what cancer actually is. It's not a parasite, it's not a bacteria, it's a corruption of our own machinery.
The cells are basically perfect, immortal versions of you just growing completely out of control.
Which introduces the most terrifying problem in medical history. If cancer is made of your own cells, how on earth do you kill it without killing the patient?
You really can't. Not back then. Any poison strong enough to kill the cancer would just destroy the host.
And that dilemma leaves medicine totally stuck for almost 100 years. Like, if you jump to the 1940s, there's this wild contrast. Post-war America is booming. The antibiotic revolution is happening.
Oh, the penicillin boom was unbelievable.
Right. In 1942, the whole United States had like 5.5 grams of penicillin in total. Fast forward just a few years, and they're making so much of it that a dose costs 4 cents.
Which was cheaper than a splash of milk.
Literally.
And the societal impact was just staggering. Typhoid and TB rates plummeted. U.S. life expectancy jumped from 47 to 68 years. People genuinely thought we were entering a disease-free utopia.
But cancer just refused to play along. It was the terrifying exception. The sources mention this 1937 Fortune magazine article called Cancer, the Great Darkness.
Very dramatic.
But accurate, because despite all the antibiotic miracles, oncologists were still using the exact same brutal tools, the cold knife and the hot ray.
Yeah, the cold knife being surgery, which back then meant extreme mechanical removal. You had surgeons like William Halsted pushing the radical mastectomy.
Which was so brutal.
Incredibly disfiguring. The whole philosophy was just, if we cut out enough tissue, maybe we can outrun the disease. And the hot ray was radiation, just incinerating the area, hoping you got all the malignant cells.
But both of those are localized treatments for something we now know is often systemic. Plus, beyond the medical limitations, there was this massive social black hole.
The stigma was intense.
People wouldn't even say the word.
Yeah.
The society editor of the New York Times literally refused to print the words breast or cancer. If a survivor tried to post a notice for a support group, they were told to call it a meeting for, quote, diseases of the chest wall.
You can't mobilize society against an enemy you aren't even allowed to name.
Exactly. And the politics were just a joke. Senator Matthew Neely tried to establish a $5 million bounty for a cancer cure.
A bounty, like the Wild West.
Yeah, basically. And of course, framing it like that just brought in thousands of letters from total quacks. People peddling blessed water and magic salves.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so Congress gets this mountain of junk mail and decides to slash the cancer budget to a measly $50,000.
And the timing for institutional help couldn't have been worse. I mean, they authorized the National Cancer Institute in 1937, built this gorgeous campus in Bethesda, but then World War II starts.
So everyone leaves.
The funds, the scientists, all the attention gets siphoned to the war. The campus was basically a ghost town.
So society is whispering, the government's distracted, surgery is barbaric. The paradigm shift had to come from the outside, specifically from this eccentric guy in a damp hospital basement.
Enter Sidney Farber.
Yes. Imagine being in this tiny 14 by 20-foot basement lab in Boston, just reeking of formalin. That was Farber's domain.
He was a pathologist at Children's Hospital, and they actually called him Four-Button Sid.
Because of the suits.
Yeah, he was super meticulous, a bit arrogant, and always wore these perfectly tailored suits, even while working in this gross basement. But as a pathologist, he was essentially a doctor of the dead.
Just looking at deceased tissues under a microscope all day.
And he hated it. He was so frustrated by that limitation, he desperately wanted to treat living patients.
Let me pause and push back on Farber's strategy here, though, because it seems completely backwards. He wants to cure cancer, so he picks childhood leukemia.
It seems like a strange choice.
It was an orphan disease, totally neglected, and so violent. The text mentions a girl in 1860, Maria Spire. She went from her first symptom to a fatal coma in 3 days. Why on earth would you start your research on the fastest, most hopeless version of the disease?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it actually makes perfect sense given the tech of the era. Back in the 40s, they didn't have CT scans or MRIs.
Right.
So if a patient has a solid tumor deep in their lung, a doctor has no way to measure if an experimental drug is shrinking it without cutting them open again. The results are invisible.
So you can't measure success or failure.
Exactly. But leukemia solved the measurement problem. It doesn't hide. It floats freely in the blood. Farber realized he could give a patient a chemical, draw a single drop of blood, put it under his microscope, and literally count the cancer cells.
He could watch the numbers rise and fall in real time.
Day by day. It was the perfect biological model. There's this scientific principle that what is true for the simple E. coli bacteria is true for the elephant. Farber thought, if I can crack this measurable fluid cancer, I can apply those rules to the solid tumors.
That is brilliant. But to fix the corrupted blood of a leukemia patient, he first had to understand how normal blood gets made. Which takes us on this wild detour from a Boston basement to a deeply impoverished community in India.
Because breakthroughs never happen in a vacuum, right? Farber was watching what his peers were doing, like George Minot down the street, who had just won a Nobel Prize for curing pernicious anemia.
Which is when your body can't make enough red blood cells.
Right. And Minot cured it using these incredibly grotesque diets.
Oh, this part was rough. He fed these severely anemic patients massive amounts of liver, raw hog stomach, and regurgitated gastric juices.
Yep. Super visceral and nasty, but the brute force nutrition actually worked. Minot eventually isolated the missing nutrient, which we know today as vitamin B12.
Meaning he proved you could turn the body's blood factories on with a specific molecular switch.
Exactly. But B12 was only half the puzzle. Because over in Bombay in 1928, this English researcher named Lucy Wills is studying a horrific anemia epidemic among pregnant cloth mill workers.
Who were living in extreme poverty.
Yeah. And she tries giving them the new B12 treatment, and it does absolutely nothing.
Because they had a different deficiency. They didn't have access to fresh vegetables.
Right. So Will starts experimenting, and she figures out she can cure them rapidly by feeding them Marmite.
Marmite? The salty yeast spread.
Yeah. Because the active ingredient in Marmite is folic acid, or folate. Folic acid is a fundamental building block for DNA. Your bone marrow has to make hundreds of billions of blood cells daily, which means insane amounts of cell division.
And to keep that metabolic engine running, it needs folic acid.
Tons of it. Without it, the production line stalls. Immature cells just pile up in the marrow because they can't synthesize the DNA they need to divide and mature.
Okay, so Farber sees all this. He looks at his leukemia patients, whose marrow is packed with these immature blast cells, and he makes a really logical leap. He thinks if I give synthetic folic acid to these kids, maybe we'll force their stalled malignant cells to finally mature into normal cells.
It was a perfectly rational hypothesis for the time.
But here's where it gets really interesting, and by interesting I mean devastating. The folic acid backfires completely.
It was awful.
It acted like high-octane fuel. The synthetic folate just hyper-accelerated the cancer. These blast cells exploded into the kids' bloodstreams. The cancer even started infiltrating their skin.
It was a total catastrophe. The pediatricians upstairs were absolutely furious at Farber. He was actively worsening a fatal condition.
So Farber is isolated. He retreats to his basement. But this spectacular failure gives him the exact blueprint he needs.
There's that great Sherlock Holmes quote in the text about this. In solving a problem of this sort, the grand thing is to be able to reason backwards. Farber realized his mistake actually exposed the leukemia's biggest weakness.
Right. If folic acid is the accelerator, you just need to build a brake. You need a chemical that blocks folic acid, an anti-folate.
And you starve the cancer. It's a brilliant use of competitive inhibition. An anti-folate looks exactly like real folic acid structurally. The cancer cell is dividing so fast it's starving, so it eagerly absorbs the anti-folate.
But it's a decoy.
Right, it's a molecular fake. The cell tries to use it to build DNA, the machinery jams, division stops, and the cancer starves itself from the inside.
So Farber takes this inverted logic, and in the summer of 1947, he asks Yelabrigada Subarao, this brilliant chemist in New York, to send him an anti-folate. And by December, Farber is standing in his freezing Boston lab, opening a package of yellow crystals.
Aminopterin.
And when he prepares it, he is launching the very first chemical experiment on cancer in a living patient.
He was literally inventing modern chemotherapy right there, taking this profound despair, reasoning backwards, and forging a targeted weapon.
Which brings us full circle back to Carla Reed in 2004. When she got that ALL diagnosis, doctors gave her a 30% chance to live. The only reason she even had that hope, the only reason they knew how to fight a cancer in her blood, was because of Sidney Farber.
To save her, the oncologists had to push her deeper into the abyss. They used highly toxic chemo derived from those early anti-folates to completely wipe out her bone marrow.
Just destroying the cancer and the normal cells all at once, walking this insane tightrope.
Hoping her healthy stem cells would recover while the malignant ones died off.
And they could walk that tightrope because Farber measured the unmeasurable, and because he was willing to look at his worst mistake from a totally different angle.
This raises an important question, though, a really unsettling one about the future. The text makes it clear that cancer is deeply entwined with our own biology. It uses the exact same genes that let an embryo grow or a wound heal.
Just mutated.
Exactly. And because mutations pile up as we get older, cancer is tied to time. So as we extend human lifespans and keep chasing longevity, we are inadvertently unleashing the one disease that also wants to be immortal. The malignant cell adapts and survives. So the question is, can we ever truly unbraid our normal, healthy growth from malignant growth?
Wow. Are we chasing a separation that's just biologically impossible? That is a heavy, fascinating concept to leave you with today as you think about these sources. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the origins of cancer pharmacology. It really shows how complex our biology is and the relentless bravery it takes to decipher it. Keep questioning your assumptions, keep learning, and never be afraid to examine your biggest failures from a new perspective. Until next time.